So welcome everyone to our parents panel session. So an insider guide to university life for new McGill parents. Today, so my name is Gilbert and I am the manager of orientation and student engagement. So you probably see me pop up all throughout summer. I was at different send-off events. I was giving webinars to parents as well. So I hope you're not too tired of me yet. I promise you I will be slowly faded out later on. But today I'm joined here by our wonderful panelists. I'm just gonna get them to introduce themselves. So Lauren, would you like to quickly introduce yourselves?
Hi everyone and welcome. I'm Lauren, the local wellness advisor in the Faculty of Engineering, and I am part of the Student Wellness Hub.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lauren. Yeah, so Lauren, today we'll give you, kind of like an overview of what the Student Wellness Hub does and what services are available to your new students. Sean, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. My name is Sean Brown. I am based in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm a BCom alum, and my daughter is just about to start her 4th year in the Faculty of Arts. We're very excited for her. She is, I think, on day 8, 9, 10 of her quarantine. She's on day 10 of her quarantine, and she's having a great time, actually. And it's nice to be here. So I'm looking forward to getting to chat with all of you.
For sure. Thank you, Sean. And he's a very seasoned McGill parent, so he's able to answer all your burning questions around what new student life transition is like. All right, last but not least, we have Yeno, who will introduce herself now.
Hi, I'm also a McGill graduate, Bachelor of Science in Microbiology and Immunology. Boy, didn't really anticipate how much I was going to need this in 2020, but yeah. I'm also the parent of a daughter who has just graduated from chemical engineering. So she finished in July, I guess, by the way the term ended. So she graduated in July. And yeah, and I'm based in London, UK. So we had a particularly unique experience getting her to McGill 4 years ago. Actually, 5 years ago. She did it in 5 years.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So thank you so much to our panelists for joining us today. And just to give you a little bit of what this webinar is going to look like. So we're going to start off, I'm going to just do my little petite TED talk at the very beginning on the different services available to your new McGill student. And then we're going to go into the question and answer period where we'll pull, the amazing knowledge from our panelists' heads, and then they will be, telling you about the details of what transition is really like for new students here. So I'm just going to go ahead and then, so afterwards, we're going to end off with a piece of advice from each panelist, and then we're just going to wrap this webinar up. So feel free to kind of submit questions to the chat feature. There's also 2 colleagues that I forgot to introduce. So Monique and Cindy, who are on the back end, they're from the Student Wellness Hub, and they'll be, taking in some questions as well as answering questions as well. So shout out to Cindy and Monique on the back end. All right, so I'm just going to quickly share my screen here and get started with this presentation. So before we begin kind of each event, at McGill, we'd like to do something called the land acknowledgement. And we do the land acknowledgement because we want to, recognize the harm that was done to our Indigenous communities, as well as, welcome, our Indigenous colleagues, peers, and students here at McGill. This is also part of McGill University's principle on equity and inclusion. So McGill University is on land which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst Indigenous people, including the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe nations. We recognize and thank the diverse Indigenous people whose presence have enriched this territory on which peoples of the world now gather. Okay, so this presentation, I titled it Supporting Your New Student. I'm actually going to take a different approach to this, so you'll see what I'll be doing later on. So that's me, Gilbert Lin, Manager of Orientation and Student Support at Campus Life and Engagement. Before diving into the content, I'd just like to give a quick shout out to our amazing colleagues in the McGill Alumni Association, who's also the main host today. So, I think when people think about the McGill Alumni Association, they think about it just for, graduate students, right? So what is it in for me? Well, they actually have multiple services and supports in place for students who are transitioning to university. As well, they provide amazing support to parents as well, with opportunities to connect with other parents. So make sure you visit their websites. There's also multiple events that are happening throughout the week, which I'll kind of highlight at the end of our presentation. And you might be wondering, who's Campus Life and Engagement? Who's this guy talking about transition with you here today? So I kind of like to introduce our unit with our mission. So we're really here and we're really invested in a new student integration into our McGill community. As well, we want to support your new students' academic and personal success. We do this by, promoting and encourage co-curricular involvement. And last but not least, we want to connect them and engage them in opportunities that develop their capacity to make positive change on campus and in their communities later on. So I know that was a bit of a mouthful, but I just wanted to say that, Clay is here to support your new students throughout their time here at McGill from beginning to end. So we partner with multiple different services to ensure that they're properly integrated into the McGill community. So one of our partners here is the McGill Alumni Association, and I'm super happy to be here as the moderator and just a quick presenter for this event. All right, so I'm going to dive into the presentation now. And can we just all agree that change is hard? Or in this case, exercising is hard. I mean, I'm kind of like that puppy there, but change is hard, right? And then there's just so much going on right now. So many of you here today, have spent countless hours, preparing and getting your new student ready for McGill. And, it's a confusing time right now, right, with COVID as well. So I know that there's just heightened anxiety and stress and whatnot. However, I think there's often little times when you're actually thinking about what it's like to actually properly transition into higher education, whether it's intellectually, socially, emotionally, to name a few. So to kind of bring you or give you an overview of what services and supports are available to your new students, I'd like to just mention the 6 areas of adjustment. So for my petite TED Talk today, if you'll humor me for a little bit, I just want to highlight the 6 areas of adjustment. So typically what we see, and this is backed by experts studying in student transition, and I just want to highlight, some of the tools and resources available for each of these areas. So the first area that we see typically is we see, the academic, right? Academically transitioning into a university is huge, and it's the main reason why your new student is here as well, right? But sometimes, you'll hear something like this from your new student. I did well in high school, but what is happening now? We all know that your students are so bright. They're bright individuals. That's why McGill had admitted them. But McGill is also an academically challenging university. So some of the challenges might include, developing self-regulatory behaviors, so time management, right, and also avoiding procrastination. Other challenges include, establishing relationships with professors, instructors, and also teaching assistants. In high school, you may be, there's one professor or one teacher to 20 to 30 students. At McGill, your classes sometimes are, hundreds of students to one professor, right? So trying to, establish those relationships might be a little bit harder. And last but not least, managing classes and the academic workload. I mean, I always tell students a typical 3-credit course at McGill, so that's 3 hours of class time. To prepare and study for that course, you kind of multiply that by, double that, so that's 6 hours of preparing and studying, plus class time, which is 9 hours, times 5, which is a normal course load. So that's more than 45 hours of work spent on, going to classes and studying. So, time management factors into this as well. So there's a lot of stress when students are kind of transitioning academically. So what can you do as a new McGill parent? Well, remind them of the resources available. So we have tutoring at McGill, tutorial services and peer tutoring from student associations. And just a quick note, as a new student, your new student is eligible for 1 hour of free tutoring. So be sure to take advantage of that. The other thing is we have one of our sister units, Office for Students with Disabilities. There are access advisors in the unit that be able to help you with academic accommodations as well. And on the other side of that, there's also, skills development workshops like time management workshops. And those are for the general public. It doesn't have to be students registered with the Office for Students with Disabilities. So remind them to take advantage of that. There's also Skills 21, workshops to help develop 21st century skills. Be sure to check out, there's an academic stream where they can help prepare students academically. For those of you who are parents of new graduate students, the other program for that will be skill sets. So be sure to check that out. The other thing I would always recommend students do is access office hours and attend tutorials. These are non-mandatory, but students don't take advantage of it. During office hours is where you get to ask your questions to your professors and your TAs about the academic, readings, questions that you may have about lectures, and also you can ask about, career projections. Ask them if you're interested in academia or research. Definitely ask your professors about that. The other thing that you can access is the McGill Writing Center. So again, there are tutors there, there are faculty lecturers there who can help you, formulate your ideas and help you write your papers. And last but not least, in Campus Life and Engagement, there is a Francophone Student Support Office branch. So we kind of are here. My colleague Minot is assistant to Francophone students. And for those of you who your new student might be studying English, primarily in English for the first time, be sure to take advantage of that. Okay, the next area of adjustment is where we see socially, right? So you might hear something like, oh, there's friends everywhere, I'm making friends, I'm doing this, but it could be an overwhelming experience as well. So some of the challenges include, experiencing changes in relationships, whether it's familial, romantic, and friendships, developing strategies for living with roommates or with new neighbors, right? They're in a completely new environment. How do you kind of cohabitate with someone else who isn't your family member? And handling social situations involving peer pressure, right? We know that this is a huge issue, not just in higher education, I mean, everywhere that we go. So what can you do to help? Well, encourage them to make the first move. So I was actually talking to a parent about it to kind of get their feedback on this. And they said, I told my new student to be proactive. So some of the services here available are, Campus Life and Engagement. We're here to help you connect socially to the different resources on campus, but also to different student groups and clubs. As well, the Student Society of McGill University does that as well. And within it, there's a first-year council for your new student. The faculty undergraduate societies have different, positions for new students as well. So you can see U0, U1 reps. There's usually freshman student societies and all of those. We also have our Students Helping Students program. So this is basically a peer-to-peer program. So we can talk a little bit, or there's, mentorship programs within the Students Helping Students program. So be sure to help your new students be aware of these resources as well. So orientation actually starts this week. So you might see me, running around and a little bit frazzled because we have many events that are coming up, but your orientation leaders are such an important resource as well. So ask your new student to connect with them, as well as for those of you who are living in residences or your new students living in residences, Residence Life. There's floor fellows, Residence Life facilitators, residence councils for them to get involved with. Okay, the next area of adjustment is the emotional adjustment, right? So you might hear something like, I'm not crying, you're crying, there's a lot of emotions going on. Some of the challenges include experiencing homesickness, coping with stress, developing strategies for handling mental health issues. So we're really excited to have Lauren join us today, who might be able to talk to you a little bit more about what McGill has to offer. But again, what can you do? So listen without judgment and remind them of of the resources that are available. So the Student Wellness Hub is basically a one-stop shop for all, mental, physical health related. We'll go into that a little bit more in detail. I'll let Lauren talk about that later. There's also the Office for Sexual Violence Response and Education, the Peer Support Center, which is a one-on-one active listening service provided confidentially by your Student Society of McGill University. There's also local wellness advisors who are in individual faculties, and they are, trained clinicians who are there to connect your new student to the different resources. And last but not least, there are case managers in the Dean of Students office who can help support your student transition. Okay, the other areas intellectually, right? So they'll be attending classes, they'll be put with the brightest students around the world. And, you might hear something like, everything's so cool, I'm changing majors, I'm trying different things. But there are challenges, right, associated with this as well. So some of them include, experiencing a shift in previously held values, feeling uncertainty about choosing a major. There's the beauty of McGill is there's so many choices, but those choices can be overwhelming, and taking calculated risks outside of the comfort zone. So we see that all the time, in seminars and in conferences. So what can you do them again? Again, listen and ask questions, right? If a student is asking you, should I choose this major, should I not? You can be there for them and, kind of answer some of their preliminary questions. We also have the career planning service. So if they're looking at, an academic career or just a general career in different fields, please get them to access our career planning service where there are career advisors who can help with that. There's also the Life After Your Degree program. I know that your new student has just started with McGill, but students in their last year or approaching their last year, there's this program available for them to help them transition from McGill, to the world. And last but not least, there's student affairs offices in different faculties as well. So make sure you get them to talk to their faculty advisor, their departmental advisor, as well as their career and internship advisor in those faculties. Okay, so the next area is culturally, right? McGill, we pride ourselves with the diverse communities. So you might hear something like, whoa, there's so many different people in this world, right? They're interacting with such diverse communities. But there is challenges associated with it as well. So living and learning with a diverse student body, adjusting to language differences amongst classmates, roommates, and faculty, and understanding their own bias, related belief systems as well. So what can you do again? Well, encourage them to meet new people, right? And participate in the different experiences. So this includes, being involved in the International Student Services as a buddy, being involved in the McGill International Student Network, attend those events, as well as the different SMU or Student Society of McGill University cultural groups. And last but not least, we also have a sister unit called Office of Religious and Spiritual Life, where there's anything, if you want to explore religion, be sure to check out that office as well. Okay, last but not least, there's a financial adjustment, right? So you might hear something like, being an adult sucks. What? Lattes are $5. Like I always say, the best kind of lattes are the ones that you don't pay for. But they're starting to manage their own finances, right? Especially for those of you whose new student might be living off campus. So challenges might include developing budgeting and financial literacy skills, understanding tuition costs and navigating financial aid, and finding and managing a job. So what can you do again? Again, remind them to stick to a budget plan, co-plan that budget plan with them as well. So we have the scholarships and student aid office where there are financial aid counselors who can help you come up with a budget plan. There's the My Future platform where your students can go and look at different job postings, as well as students accounts. They're here to help you, look at your tuition bill and make you understand, what you're paying for at the end of the day. I just want to quickly mention this summer we started our Clay to Success series, which we've interviewed different offices and supports around campus. They're mini video clips and they are really, really useful for you to understand what services are available to your new student. Since you'll be getting the PowerPoint today, I've also put in useful links and resources for you to look at, so be sure to check those out. And last but not least, thank you so much again for listening to me blab on for the last 15 minutes or so. If you need any help, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. I always say, Clay might not have the answer, but we'll find someone who will. So thank you very much. I see there's some questions coming in that I might address right now. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. One of the parent is asking, can you please repeat the workload number of hours associated to each course? Yeah, so I can definitely do that. So at McGill, typically we see a 3-credit course. So what that means is each credit is associated with a number of hours. So a 3-credit course will usually be 3 hours a week of class hours. A 4-credit course will be 4 hours per week. So what we recommend students is that you kind of multiply that by 2. So 3 times 2 is 6, plus the original class time hours. So that's 9 hours for one course that you will be attending classes, studying, and prepare for the course. But again, these are just very general information. So some students might kind of deal with it a little bit differently, but that's typically what we see. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking because I've been talking a lot, and I'm going to turn it over kind of to our panelists. So the first question we keep getting this summer is, starting March, McGill had decided to cancel all in-person classes and move remotely. So I kind of want to throw this to our apparent panelists here today. What was that experience like for you, having your student finish the semester remotely? So I'm going to throw it maybe to Sean. We'll start off with Sean first.
Thank you, Gilbert, and that was a really helpful introduction. I think it set the stage really nicely and probably answered a lot of the questions that may be coming up. In March, we were looking at, and again, we're based in Boston, a fairly high level of virus in the state of Massachusetts, so we had some concerns about bringing Ellie home. So initially, she did her online instruction from her studio apartment in the student ghetto. And then there were some rumors about potential borders closing, and we decided to fly her back from Montreal to Boston. She took a really early flight on a plane that it turned out to be quite empty, and made it back just a couple days before there were a bunch of backups at the border. So we were very lucky there. In terms of once she got home, the most important things were making sure that she felt like she still had the space that she had as an independent adult in Montreal. And so this was something that my wife and I talked about. Ellie has a long-term boyfriend. We were very flexible in terms of, just giving her that space and to continue feeling like an adult while she was taking those classes. A couple other things, making sure the internet was fast. I actually upgraded our internet connection because we had everybody at the house and we were all drawing on a fair bit of bandwidth. We have a mesh networking system. These things may sound trivial, but they can actually make a world of difference. If everybody's got a really robust internet connection, it just takes a little bit of stress away. In terms of supporting Ellie, she joined us for dinner. I mean, it was really lovely actually having our family of 4 together again for that time. And we tried to make the most of it. So we have family dinners and really just try to be supportive. I think in terms of Ellie's experience, initially, there were some hiccups in terms of getting access to profs, but what she's told me since then is that has really gotten a lot better, and that, now we've had all summer for folks to practice. Ellie then took a couple of summer classes online and she had a great experience with that. So, I think overall it's just making sure that if and when they transition back, that it's not this abrupt, massive change, that they're continuing to get sort of the personality and individual building opportunities that they had while they were at school. I hope that helps. Any other questions on that?
Yeah, the giving space is, I think, one of the things that we've talked about before, right? Like, that's super important. Do you have any other, advice, suggestions about or what happened?
No, I was a very good explanation on Sean. I mean, I have two other children, not both, the other two are not at McGill, but at another university in the UK, and she did come home. Emma, my daughter at McGill, decided to stay in Montreal because she thought, sorry, much better scenario in Montreal than in London, UK, virus-wise. So she stayed. And had a quiet sort of month, I think, while everybody readjusted in early March, and then I never once complained about the provision of classes. And she wrote final exams and graduated. So that went as smoothly as I think any of the other, I can only compare it to the other three children, but I think Sean's point is very good. You have to, if they're home, and it is strange having an adult student home from university, and probably also to watch out because they will be missing. The other thing about university students is that they're at that age where their friendship groups are really important to their mental health and just the way they speak. So to provide a lot of opportunity, or to even make sure that they're talking to their friends as much as possible. So I think that had there's a lot of talk about that at some point here, I'm sure, same in Montreal. So it is a dynamic to be aware of. But, from Emma's perspective, everything was smooth. She had a lot of friends. I mean, because she was on a longer fifth year, she did a minor as well. A lot of her friends were gone. So she probably struggled in that respect, that she didn't have many friends in the city. But other than that, it was, and they're all back doing masters and PhDs now. So, yeah.
For sure. Thank you so much. And I think you mentioned a great point around, the mental transition. A lot of the times we're really focused on the physical transition, especially, given this remote environment. So I'm actually going to throw it maybe to Lauren a little bit. Lauren, if you want to just give us a brief overview of, what kind of support services, especially mental health support services, available to our new students at McGill.
Great. There is a lot of support and resources, as you guys are able to see. I think just navigating that can sometimes be quite overwhelming for our new students coming in, or even for our already existing students on campus. So as you said, Gilbert, the Student Wellness Hub is a one-stop shop where we have a multidisciplinary team of professionals. So clinicians, dietitians, psychiatrists, doctors, nurses, all there to be of support to our students when they need to be seen. As much as the Student Wellness Hub is there with the multidisciplinary team of staff, we're not there to act as an emergency service like a hospital. So certainly if there is a situation where a student is in immediate need, they would be referred and transferred directly to the hospital. So I just want to kind of clarify that piece, because sometimes that is a little bit confusing. So we do have clinicians. We have many trained, amazing clinicians at the hub that right now are offering remote and virtual appointments daily, seeing our students via Zoom and having that ongoing support. And then the beautiful thing is that there are now local wellness advisors. There's many of us that are all directly embedded in each faculty to be of direct support to all undergraduate and graduate students. So whenever a student is not sure what to do, where to go, be it if they are struggling academically, if they are feeling anxious or stressed for the first time, if they are feeling isolated and not sure what to do about that, if they're having issues with relationships, or maybe their supervisor. For our graduate students, it would be best to book an appointment with the local wellness advisor directly in their faculty to have that appointment, which by the way is free, and we would be able then to guide them in terms of what the next steps may be. Aside from that, there's also many workshops and groups that are now offered virtually and remotely around managing stress or procrastination, even like how to deal with motivation right now, which can be really difficult when you're working from home. So there's many workshops and programming that we are offering because we want students to stay connected. So even though it is remote learning, we are here to try to offer support in different ways with regards to career planning services, or even the advisors within the faculty. I always recommend students to book an appointment at least once a year with their advisor and their faculty. That way they have that link, they have that connection to make sure they're taking the right courses based on their needs and so on and so forth. It never hurts to ask and to have those people that you can connect with to make sure you're on the right path, especially right now where there's so much uncertainty. So just to know that there are resources. So always the first step could be to direct your student to one of the local wellness advisors and their faculty, and we can be the one to help direct them to the exact point of service that they need. So it kind of breaks that barrier when things are overwhelming and we're used to kind of being referred to all different people and places. Here it's just one person, and we will make sure that you are linked up because we have that alliance and referral process in place.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lauren. And just to let you guys know, I know all of the local wellness advisors, and they are freaking amazing people. Like, they're just amazing group of people who are able to connect you to the different resources available. They are really well connected, and they're really your first link to anything. So be sure to encourage your new student to reach out to a local wellness advisor, should they, or they're called ELWAs because we like acronyms here and just little names here at McGill. So be sure to reach out to them. So thank you very much, Lauren.
And just one thing to clarify, that although we're not seeing students in person right now, we will start moving back to campus so that there will be a physical presence there, which I think is a little bit reassuring as well. So we will be moving back one day a week, just again to help kind of navigate these times, and as our students are on campus and so on. So we will be there as well to kind of help navigate that.
And as well, services will be available remotely too for those of you who can't join us as well. So thank you very much, Lauren. And I just wanted to clarify some stuff. So when Lauren was saying, encouraging your new student to kind of access the student affairs office, talk to your faculty advisors. Yes, please. I can't say that enough. Please check in with your faculty advisor every year. Your faculty advisors there are make sure that you're satisfying your freshman requirements, as well as making sure that you are on track for graduation. You might be seeing some, program advisors or departmental advisors. Those advisors are important as well. So encourage your new student to, meet with them because they will ensure that you are on track for program completion requirements. So be sure to check that out as well. This also leads very nicely to a next question. So we got a question coming in, could you speak to campus life and engagement for students learning remotely a little bit? So we actually have a wonderful unit here at McGill, Teaching and Learning Services, and they are primarily there to help your students succeed academically. So they will be around during orientation. They will be giving webinars on how to use Zoom and remote learning successful strategies. So be sure to get your new student to register for those webinars coming up. So be sure to double check that. Okay, so there's also a lot of questions around, new student integration. So I just want to maybe throw it to maybe Sean again. Do you have any tips or advice to encourage your new students to kind of connect virtually with their peers?
Sure, and again, our experience in bringing Ellie to Gardner Hall was a little bit different. If folks were bringing people in, I would say come a couple days early and help your child get settled quickly. And we did that and found it to be very helpful. I think in terms of the virtual meeting, it's the same kind of opportunities for serendipity, right? So Ellie made some really good friends on her floor at Gardner, just because they happen to be on the same, in the same floor and space, just a couple, doors down from each other. And those have been lasting friendships. And so I would say, to the parents and their students who are trying to think about how to make those connections, again, it's like try and identify what are those points of connection to then get those introductions. So it could be, what classes are you going to be in together, and trying to create like an informal Zoom social, but not to make it really big. One of the challenges with these online formats is that you're not going to bare your soul in front of 50 or 100 people. You might do it in front of one or two if you get to know them. So thinking through how can you replicate that chance meeting that you might get on the floor of your residence hall in a similar way. And it will take a little bit more work. And my other advice would be trying to do it via video. And there are some tools for the parents. My wife and I have found the McGill parent group on Facebook to be super helpful. People are very open. You get to hear how you're not all alone, even as a parent, in terms of the things that you're going through. So that's also helpful in terms of tips and tricks.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sean. Those are super useful. Before I go to Yeno, I'm just going to mention that the chat function is open, so be sure to submit your questions. We have a lot coming in, so be sure to submit them so we have a chance to answer them. Any tips or advice on social integration, Yeno?
Well, again, Emma had a unique entry into McGill in that she was interrailing, which is something that Europeans, the European students do. And so she got herself from Frankfurt to Montreal. And I have to say, I almost feel like we were totally negligent parents because we thought she's a very independent child and we wanted to encourage that. And she's like, no, it's okay. I'll just cut my trip short. I can still do both things and I'll get myself to McGill. Well, it was a bit fraught. She got there, two airport transfers, got herself to Montreal. So I'm a Montrealer. My parents picked her up, brought her to, I think they had to go to RBC and pick her up, keys, etc. She got in quite late. So I think Sean's point is right, get there early and don't do what we did, but it worked out well for Emma. She had a great floor, great friends. The people she met that first year and she was at Douglas, so up in the hill, have been her best friends throughout all of the years. And I think probably in terms of, perhaps, I don't know, I was a Montrealer going to school, and living at home. Her experience, obviously quite different if you're an out of city or perhaps even a city, but living off, away from home. And perhaps some of the difficulty there is that you don't necessarily meet the people on your course. So maybe another option for them is to maybe start, with the people in their class. Maybe that's another way of developing social connections. I think it took Emma probably a good second year before she had a lot of friends in her program. They weren't necessarily people who were in her residence.
For sure. Thank you. That was super, super helpful. And I think the thing I want to emphasize again is encourage your new student to attend those smaller tutorials or, the labs, and also because some of them are not mandatory. And I find that students, they're just like, okay, they're not mandatory, I'm not going. But those are the times where you really get to connect in a smaller cohort and not in a huge auditorium like Leacock 132. Because I don't know if you've been in there already, but it is a scary environment to just pack yourselves in with 500 other students, and it can be an overwhelming experience. So encourage them to attend those smaller sessions. I'm going to throw this question to Lauren as well. Lauren, from your perspective, from seeing students, what's your kind of tip and advice for students to connect socially and in a virtual environment as well?
For one, I think students need to get outside and get some fresh air. So I was seeing a lot of students that were quite isolated and really reluctant about leaving their apartments, especially if they were living in roommates, what that looked like with regards to safety and so on. And I was really encouraging to at least go outside and get some fresh air, if it is walking outside in a safe way. Because we're so much in front of our computer screens now, especially via Zoom. So as much as there's so much that's offered, it can be really overwhelming and exhausting at the end of the day. And kind of meeting someone online right through Zoom is not the same as in-person contact. So how can we do that safely? And right now, since the weather is nice and hoping that continues for, I don't know, another 2 months, until it does get cold, how can we, meet outside at a distance safely you know, if it is catching up with a friend, and so on. I know that a lot of the faculties are also organizing a lot of different gatherings and workshops and events that are taking place online. I would just say to your kids and to the students, go in, check it out, pop in. You know, if it's not for you, it's not for you. There'll be something else, but at least go and try, because if we don't, then we don't know. And there's so much kind of Netflix and sitting on Zoom that we can do. So trying to get outside while it is warmer, and staying in touch with families via FaceTime and friends, just kind of keeping those connections alive, aside from the academic requirements.
Perfect. Yeah, like again, going outside, I think we're spending so much time on our computers right now where we call it Zoom fatigue, or I just say I'm zoomed out for the day. But yeah, so going outside and connecting, that's super, super important. And the other thing is encourage your new students to attend orientation activities. Frosh begins officially in 2 days. And even though Frosh will look completely differently this year because we will all be virtual, the coordinators have found out fantastic, innovative ways to help engage your new students. So kind of be our ambassadors and encourage them to sign up for those events as well. So I'm getting a lot of questions, and I know this is kind of the elephant in the room, and I'll address it right now about winter semester. So what is that going to look like? So unfortunately, and I know that you may be rolling your eyes again of him saying this again, but we still don't have an answer for that. We're very much working very closely with public health authorities and just waiting directives from our local government as well as the government of Canada, making sure again the safety and priority of our staff, students, and faculties, taking those in mind and making them our priority. So once we know, we will definitely immediately alert the general McGill community. But like Lauren was saying, we're slowly reopening up. There are some areas in the university where they are taking in-person appointments. So be sure to check out more announcements from McGill University in the next few weeks. So maybe we'll just shift focus a little bit and just talk a little bit about the logistics so no matter where you are, so maybe you will be coming in the winter semester or next year, but are there any kind of tips and tricks around banking and phone plans for our students? Like what did that look like? So maybe this time I'll start with Yeno, and then we'll go to Sean for that.
Yeah, I think those were big surprises, and we'd lived in Montreal, but you forget some of the idiosyncrasies of different provinces or different countries. So, something I'd forgotten, a debit card in Europe is used as it's a cash card. So you can take out as much money as you want. You want to be sure that you're looking at plans because you can't take money out more than whatever it is. I can't even remember, like 15 times a month or something before you start accruing costs. So you just have to know that they're different. Phone plans are more expensive than they are in Europe. I don't know how many people are listening from Europe, but you need to look at that and sort that out. It's actually a lot. There's a lot of things have improved, but probably get those things in place, and they're going to need help because it is quite different. Again, I think province to province, but definitely country to country. So two good ones to raise. Again, negligent parents on that one. We played catch up on that. It's like, what do you mean you can't just, yeah. And there's also the ATM machines, they're not always, I think there are some on campus, and there are banks that those are the ones that it may be better to use. Those are, I don't know.
Perfect. Sean?
Yeah, so a couple things. One, I would just say it is very like having some kind of a banking relationship, especially if you're out of country. So, while we had visited Montreal plenty and used our ATMs in Montreal without any trouble, there is a certain benefit of having a Canadian bank account. Specifically, you can write Canadian checks. For the last several years, our daughter's been in an apartment. She could give her, pay rent, send money to others. So definitely establish a banking relationship. And my experience with Ellie was that there was a bunch of banks that were set up in that frosh week where you could meet the various representatives. I think one of them gave her a teddy bear or something cute like that. And, and she ended up going to that. And it was just all very, fun and friendly and very reasonable in terms of pricing. That being said, getting the money to her Canadian bank account from the US was actually a little tricky initially because we wanted to do a wire transfer. And my only point there is don't do it at the last minute. Do your research, talk to your sending bank if you're in the States, for example, figure out what it's going to take. Sometimes there's a couple days delay. So just make sure that because it's that first time that you're trying to do the transfer that's the most stressful because maybe something is needed immediately. So I do think that the banking relationship is important. Some of the other surprises we had, Netflix is different. So if your kids have favorite Netflix, it's going to be a little different when they get to Canada. I do want to also say that the reason that I was chuckling, Gilbert, when you were asking about the winter semester was I was thinking about how cold it's going to be. So for those of you who aren't in cold climates, maybe your student isn't going to be on campus, they might be happy about that. But if they are going to be in Montreal, absolutely get some warm weather gear, specifically really good boots. I cannot stress enough how important really good boots are. Now, you don't have to get them right away when you drop them off, but if you're not going to be back again, think about that, like a nice winter jacket, really good warm boots. And then one other thing that we found that was helpful, and this was more in the subsequent years, not while Ellie was in the dorm, was there are various subscription accounts around food. Ellie had one that's called HelloFresh, where it actually sent her all the ingredients to make a meal very easily. It made her feel self-sufficient, but it wasn't like she had to go out and buy all kinds of stuff where she'd only use a little bit of it, right? Everything was in the right proportions, no waste, and that worked out really well. And she said that she had another friend, if it wasn't HelloFresh, Cook It, Cookit was the other one.
Yeah, I think
that's helpful.
For sure. Yeah, I love those food meal prep boxes because I hate grocery shopping. So everything comes chopped up to the right amount and I can't follow a recipe to save a life. So those are really, really helpful at the end. Thank you for bringing that up, the winter stuff, because we do know Montreal does get cold. So maybe, do you want to, as a Montrealer, any advice for our, new student parents?
No, I think Sean's right. I mean, they definitely need boots. I mean, I remember not using boots. Of course, as a teenager in Montreal, you just wore, sneakers. Sorry, I don't know what we call them, trainers, sneakers all the time, and which is really. And if you're up in residence, up at the top, that gets very icy. And that's the other thing. People never think that it's also the ice. So I think you need definitely good boots and a good coat because when it's minus. Yeah, I don't want to scare people, but it gets to be always
We're trying to keep them here.
Sorry? Yeah.
We're just trying to keep them here, not to scare them away.
I mean, it's great. Be a little warmer.
For sunny. Like the thing is, I live in London. It's gray. It's gray for 10 months of the year. And winters in Montreal may be cold, but they're also bright and sunny. So that's a super positive out of it. It's no such thing as bad weather. It's just bad equipment. So get the equipment right, I think. Yeah.
For sure. Lauren, did you have something to add?
I was just saying that maybe this winter will look a little different and maybe it'll be a little bit warmer. Definitely the equipment is key for sure to make everything a lot more bearable.
For sure. Lauren, I actually have a question for you while we're on the subject of the winter semester. So we typically see, when the days get a little bit shorter and when winter comes, students might feel a little bit less connected and all that, and it gets colder and whatnot. So from your experience, do you have any tips or advice for students to kind of adjust in that period, that transition? So from, the fall semester to the winter semester?
Yeah, it's a really good question because typically that time of year is when our students are busiest going into exams and prep for all of that. So you kind of have the two combined, getting darker earlier, getting colder, and then having to be kind of cooped up at home or in the library or whatever that looks like for you, having to study and prep and spending long hours doing that. So I think it really, at least what we try to kind of emphasize is kind of getting in some, like working on those coping tools and study skills a little bit early on. How can we prep so that we don't go into crisis then, right? A lot of us end up leaving things right to the very last minute, and then, you know, a lot of our students are pulling all-nighters and so on and so forth. But how can we get the ball rolling and the conversation going beforehand to really minimize that stress? Not that it won't be there, but how can we minimize it? There are a lot of things that do take place around that time, like a lot of faculty student groups will offer like free breakfast or snacks and stuff like that to make things a little bit more bearable as things are colder, as our students don't have that much time to necessarily make a whole meal, that there's different events and stuff like that that do go on to make it a little bit better. Stuff like that may or may not happen. It may look a little bit different this semester, but there's still going to be stuff that's going to be up and running virtually, where students can kind of still stay connected, even though that transition and timing is a little bit rough.
For sure, yeah. Thank you very much. And, you know, typically in January, we do see there's a lot of activities coming out from, you know, the student societies or the faculty associations. I know that each faculty kind of has their own faculty events. So again, encourage your students to check those out, because it is, again, a great time to connect with students in your faculties. I know that I was a science student a while ago, and they had, you know, different majors connecting, you know, different majors for, you know, the science games teams and whatnot. So encourage your new students to check those out as well. I love this question that's going to come up, and this is for our parents. So boundaries, you know, and especially, I guess this is like a two-part question. So the first part is, you know, when you're, you know, you become more you start from being more hands-on to kind of hands-off later on. So how did you, you know, let go, or how did you respect their boundaries now that they're in, you know, college and university? So maybe I'll start with Sean. How did that process? What is that like? What did you do?
So again, I'm an alum. I spent 4 years in Montreal. I loved my time at McGill. And I really loved the feeling of independence and being treated like an adult. Actually, my experience as a student was more like Yanil's daughter's experience. I just drove up. My parents didn't even come with me, and it was fine, right? McGill is sort of organized to sort of support folks, and it was really, really good. That being said, when I would get home, you know, my parents, I was still living in their house. And so with Ellie, one of the things that we wanted to do was to help her continue to grow and develop as an independent adult. And so we continue to give her that independence while offering some helpful advice. I'm going to give one. It's kind of cheesy, but I'm going to share it anyway. So one of the jokes that I had with Ellie was, don't drink the punch. And I know that sounds kind of weird. Like, what could that possibly mean? Well, you know, in Montreal, the drinking age is 18. And my message to her wasn't like, don't try drinking, right? Because she's legal and she could. But it was more just to be very careful and thoughtful about the situations where she does drink. And if she is drinking, to make sure that she can control the quantity. And so the whole thing about punch is you never really know what's in it. And I don't have anything against punch per se, but it's more just always keep an eye and consume thoughtfully. So that was one example where we could have just told her completely abstain. And I think that might have been a little less useful to her than to give her a little bit of guidance that can help her think through how she can act in particular situations with friends. So that's one example. I know it's a little cheesy, but it's what we do.
No, that's really good. Thank you so much, Sean. Yanil, any
Yeah. So Emma was a frosh leader 2 years, so second and third year. And the other thing, just to add to Sean's perspective, is yes, Montreal has a younger drinking age, but I think the flip side too is that when you get to university, there are a lot of people who've been through CEGEP system in Quebec, and so I don't think there is that. Well, I may be wrong, but there isn't that a similar thing as getting to university for the first time or college in the US, where you're probably out and drinking more than you would have because you've already had a 2-year system. So that kind of does have an effect, generally speaking. I mean, it's different if you're in residence, but it changes, I think, the way the university works. And as a result, I think one of Emma's jobs as a Frosh leader was also just watching out for the new younger kids coming in. So there's a lot of support, students amongst each other on that front. Possibly there wasn't when we were at uni, but I think, or I can't, I don't really remember the Frosh leaders being as aware of that as they are now, is probably what I would say to that. Yeah.
For sure, yeah.
And actually, if I could just add 2 other things. One is the fact that it's legal makes it much easier to talk about, right? Yeah. So, in the States, unfortunately, a lot of times it's hidden, and kids will try to binge because they don't want to get caught. And in Montreal, you can actually develop a more healthy attitude, and you can talk about it with, upperclassmen, and it's not this sort of thing that you're trying to sneak in. So I think that's really important. And then the other thing that I would say is that, while it's legal, McGill is not an easy place academically. And if you spend all your time partying, you're not going to graduate. And you sort of figure that out pretty quickly, even, no matter how well you did in high school. As you said earlier, Gilbert, the academics are actually quite rigorous. And so you also have to develop a sense of balance, when you work and when you play, and you have to make the 2 work. And again, this comes back to this notion of, our kids are becoming adults, and it's a really good way for them to sort of make that transition.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, Emma very quickly learned that, she'd have, her high school here in the UK was a highly achieving academic school. So she knew how to work, and she found that the step up of how much she was required to work. I think I'm going to quote the numbers wrong, but she says, an average engineering student was probably putting 60 to 80 hours a week just to be able to keep up there. So they're intense courses across, and I think they will get tired. So it's not, there isn't a lot of, especially if you come from a late A-level system and going into university. If your experience is going into university in the UK, it's a very different experience going into, an academic degree at McGill, where you have more lectures and there's just more continual assessment, as it were. Because here in the UK, you can, the first year doesn't even count. So if that's your frame of reference, that's not what they're going to experience at McGill. It will count from the first term. Mm-hmm. And they've figured that out quite quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, it's this transition is, I'm just thinking about my first year as well. We all, we recruit the best of the best here to McGill, and everyone is here straight A students or 4.0s. And, I always look back and I think about the first exam that, my peers did and I did, and then we did not, get, and that's kind of like a reality check. And I actually think that's a really good one, because it kind of just, makes us realize that we're in a different environment right now, and to really be proactive about your learning, because there's no one chasing you down anymore. No teachers, no one. If you're, if you need help, if you need support, you have to reach out. And this is the message that we keep instilling in our new students. Reach out. There are help available, but no one's going to be tracking down, did you do your homework? Did you study for your exams and stuff? You have more freedom, but you have to be able to manage your time more effectively now. We have a question actually came in about insurance and medical insurance. I don't know if we maybe Sean or Yanel, anyone want to just touch upon that a little bit? What you did for insurance worked?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sean.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
There are probably more American people coming in, so probably go ahead.
So I the easy answer is just pay for the McGill insurance. So, we have a very good international coverage from my employer. I work for an international consultancy. And even then, it's just much easier to have the Quebec health insurance that you can get through McGill. So that'd be my first piece of advice. And if she needed to see a specialist, we could bring Ellie back to Boston, but generally speaking, the price was very reasonable and the access was pretty good.
Perfect.
Yeah. So Emma is a Canadian citizen. She was born in Montreal, but so I think at some point she did establish residency, which is another thing I think they can do. I think it's 6 months to establish residency. But she was definitely on the McGill, I think it's Blue Cross. The McGill dental and medical plan. And I have since discovered that you can also buy medical insurance going into Canada because, all sorts of things have come up now with COVID on health insurance, but there are a lot of companies in Canada selling health insurance. So once you get in there, it's the same thing whether you're coming from any province because it's all provincially regulated. So as Sean said, stick with the McGill one. And then you can access I think she had to see the doctor in that first semester through the McGill student health services. So yeah, do it that way.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much again to our panelists here today and to Lauren, our local wellness advisor. So I do realize that we are at the end of our webinar. So maybe just to end very quickly, 20, 30 seconds, we'll go one by one, maybe just a last piece of advice or just a quick takeaway for our parents today. So maybe I'll start off with Lauren. Lauren, do you have any thing that you'd like to say to our parents?
Basically, I think just that, change the process. And although it feels like the whole world has changed and we can kind of feel saturated in that a little bit, that some change is good. And it's part of development. It's kind of part of that process and the different life stages. So even when we are seeing our kids and students having those growing pains, just to kind of remind them that it will be okay and this is a process, and to kind of just welcome that at this point rather than just kind of hunker down on all the negative.
Perfect. Thank you, Lauren. Sean.
First off, this is an exciting time. One of our goals as parents is to help our children sort of launch, right? And this is an important part of their launch. So while it can also be sad not to be able to spend as much time with them, it's really exciting to see them take this important next phase in their lives. I would say that, staying in touch, but not too much in touch. We did a weekly video, like now everybody does Zoom, but when we first started doing it, this was almost 4 years ago, and it was a very different thing. It was much harder to do the video call. So I'd say keeping in touch via video, maybe once a week, is also really nice. We just had a standing dinner where we would take a meal together on Sundays and just catch up. And so there wasn't any formal agenda. And then the last thing, I realized that there was a question earlier about cell phones. We have a T-Mobile plan, at least in the States, that ports over very effectively to Canada. We didn't have to change your phone number or any of that. And so that was really easy. I don't know what the other major players have, but we've been very happy with T-Mobile. And then finally, Ellie was the president of the Chocolate Club. So if you want to meet somebody, if you want to tell you, if your kids like chocolate, I told her I'd give her a plug for the Chocolate Club.
I love that. Thank you so much, Sean. And last but certainly not least,
Yeah, I think just to touch on all of those things, McGill's an exciting place. Emma has met really interesting people from all over the place. I mean, probably her lifelong friends will be Americans, which as a Canadian, you don't often get to meet Americans. So that's kind of a fun one. I mean, she does have her European friends as well, but there is an international university and a lot of students come in from lots of different places. So don't be scared if your child is going to be the first one or the only one coming from, whatever. There will be lots of them like that. She's had a great time. She's loved it. Montreal's a fantastic city. I know we talked about the cold, and I know it's different right now because of COVID, but it's a very warm people are warm and outgoing, and I think it's a very safe city for students, and they have a great time. So she lives in the plateau. There's food shops everywhere. She's learned to cook. She has an interest in lots of different cultural foods, etc. So she's had an amazing time in Montreal. I had a third thing I can't remember, but it's a great place to go, and it gives you a lot of flexibility. So I don't know that there are many places that she could have done a chemical engineering with a minor in history. So she's been able to do that. And I know the final thing that I want to say is get involved. And she did. She wasn't necessarily a joiner in, but she was VP for internal. She ran for government, so she was VP internal comms at chemical and for chemical engineering. Sorry, did I say comms? VP internal for that. She's on the ring the ring ceremony. Frosh. I mean, she's done a lot of things. The more you put into it, the more you get out. And she is not a joiner in. It's just that it is a culture that allows you to do that. She even did radio in the first year. And the other thing to get over cold winters is there's skiing. I think there's a ski team, a bus that takes you skiing. She joined, I think I don't even know what the below mural is, hockey, which was hilarious because she couldn't ice skate. So, she felt she had to embrace that Canadian thing, and she did play ice hockey for a while. So, there's lots of opportunities to get involved, which probably will be slightly different because of COVID, but whatever they are, encourage them to do that. And then figure out a way to communicate, because we, as you figured out by now, we were pretty hands off. And I now, having had 2 go through university, I wonder if what I would do now is probably in those early days, figure out who their friends are and get those numbers in case you can't reach them. Just like once in a while, they might not be picking up their phone because they've got a paper due or they've got a big midterm and they just didn't tell you, and you're bringing and not getting them. And it'd be good, have you seen Emma? Yes, thank you. That's it. Goodbye. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. So again, I just want to say thank you to all our panelists today, Lauren, Sean, and Yanel. It was amazing. Thank you for sharing. I'd also just like to thank all of you for participating today. Be sure to sign up for all of the other events happening this week for our parents. So there's, I believe, one tomorrow and a couple in the next few days. So be sure to sign up for those. And just to quickly let you know that all the recording will be available as of September 2nd. So if you'd like to watch it, you can, and this PowerPoint will be sent to you as well. So wishing you all the best of luck and the best wishes to the start of your semester. And again, if you have any questions, please reach out. We'll be here to answer those. So thank you so much to everybody. Have a wonderful day, and hopefully we'll see you all in person soon. Bye, everyone.